My name is Ethan Taylor. I'm 22, live in Seattle, and work in commercial architecture. My life, for the most part, looks polished on the outside, clean lines, glass buildings, structured deadlines. But this isn't about the life people see. It's about the part one buried for years. This is the story I've never told anyone. Call it, my friend's mom called me home and said, "Promise me you won't tell my son." It was the fall of 2020, late October. The leaves were dying beautifully in Seattle, and I had just finished a demanding project that had taken 6 months and most of my sleep. I remember sitting in my office, looking out at the skyline, when my phone buzzed. "Ethan? It's Marianne." My heart jolted. Marianne, my best friend Jake's mom. I hadn't spoken to her in, 2 years? Maybe 3. Jake and I grew up in Spokane together. Best friends since we were 11. We did everything side by side, college, internships, even moved to Seattle around the same time. But somewhere along the way, we drifted. He started working in politics, and I buried myself in architectural deadlines and heartbreaks I never talked about. Marianne's voice was soft, familiar. There was something different in her tone. Not motherly, not warm, just quiet, uncertain. "Can you come by the house this weekend?" she asked. "Is Jake okay?" I asked instinctively. She hesitated. "He's fine. It's me who needs to talk. Please, don't tell him." Something in her voice grabbed me by the chest. I cleared my schedule and drove the 4.5 hours home that Saturday morning, like a man chasing something he didn't understand. Her house hadn't changed. The same white fence, same hydrangeas near the porch. The wind was colder in Spokane, sharper. The past clung to that air like dust in a sealed room. Marianne opened the door before I could knock. She looked older, not in the way time ages people, but in the way pain rewrites them. Her blonde hair was streaked with silver now, and her eyes, still that soft blue, looked like they'd held back too many tears. She let me in without a word. We sat at the kitchen table. She poured coffee, and I noticed her hands trembled slightly as she pushed the mug toward me. I waited. My pulse was loud in my ears. Then she said it. "Promise me you won't tell my son." And I swear, the whole room stopped breathing. I nodded, slowly. "Okay. No, I mean it, Ethan. Whatever I say next, you can't repeat it. Not to Jake. Not to anyone. I promise." She stared at me for a long second. Then she leaned back in her chair and said something that shattered the floor beneath my feet. "I think I'm in love with you." I blinked. I thought I misheard her. But she didn't laugh. She didn't flinch. She just kept looking at me like this truth had been waiting years to be spoken. "Marianne." She raised a hand gently, like she had rehearsed this. "You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. I felt it since that week Jake brought you home from college sophomore year. You were sitting right there, laughing with your feet on the counter, like you already belonged. And ever since then," she trailed off. Her hands were knotted in her lap. My breath caught. I remembered that day, vividly. I had been 20, coming back from UW with Jake for Thanksgiving. Marianne had been warm, funny, effortlessly graceful. And I did feel at home. But I thought it was just that maternal kindness. Except now, looking into her eyes, I realized something else. There had been moments, glances, accidental touches, unspoken pauses. I never dared name them. I swallowed hard, unsure of what to feel. "Why now?" I asked. She looked away. Her voice cracked. "Because I'm sick, Ethan. And if I don't say it now, I never will." My stomach dropped. "Sick?" She nodded, slowly. "Stage 2 pancreatic. The doctors are not hopeful." She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm not asking for anything. Not love. Not time. I couldn't die with this secret in me. You were the only man who ever really saw me. Not as Jake's mom. Not as a widow. Just as a woman. You looked at me like I was more. And suddenly, everything in me cracked. Because she was right. Back then, I did see her that way. Not constantly. Not obsessively. But quietly. Deeply. In those stolen seconds when she was humming to herself in the kitchen or laughing too loudly at Jake's bad jokes. I noticed her. I admired her. And part of me, buried under guilt and boundaries, felt something. Something dangerously close to love. We sat in silence. Then she reached out and touched my hand. Just once. Brief and electric. "I don't expect you to feel the same," she whispered. "But if there's even a piece of you that did, please just stay a little. Let's not waste this time pretending." I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Every rational part of me screamed run. Every emotional part of me screamed stay. I stayed. That night, we sat on the back porch with wine and blankets. She talked about her late husband, about how lonely it had been, about how she always hoped someone like me would walk into her life again, but never expected it would be me. We didn't touch. We didn't kiss. But the silence between us was intimate in a way I couldn't explain. And when I drove back to Seattle the next morning, I left something behind. And took something I didn't understand with me. 2 weeks passed. I didn't call Jake. I didn't visit Marianne. I thought time would dilute the intensity. Then, just as I started to believe it was over, a letter arrived at my office. No return address. Inside was a photo of Marianne from the 90s. Young, radiant, full of life. On the back, she'd written, "If you ever come back, I'll be here, until I can't be." And suddenly, every line I thought I wouldn't cross began to blur. I kept that photo in the top drawer of my desk, buried beneath client sketches and project proposals, like a sin I didn't know how to name. Every time I reached for a pen or a ruler, I saw her face. And each time, something inside me flinched. I didn't respond to the letter. Not for days. Not until a Friday night in November when I found myself walking alone near Pike Place, staring at couples holding hands, watching people live lives untouched by the kind of torment I'd invited into mine. That night, I opened a draft email to Jake and stared at the blank screen. What could I even say? "Hey man, your mom's dying, and she told me she might be in love with me, and I think I might feel something too?" No. Instead, I drove back to Spokane the next morning. Unannounced. She opened the door with a softness that shook me. "I didn't think you'd come back," she said, voice low. I stepped inside. I tried not to. There was silence, the kind that hums like static when emotions have no clear direction. She led me into the living room. There was a fire going, and she looked smaller in the light than I remembered, like her body was already beginning to let go of the fight. I sat on the couch and she sat beside me. Not close, but not far. "I'm sorry I said it," she whispered. "I shouldn't have told you. I'm glad you did." I didn't plan to say that, but once the words were out, there was no taking them back. She looked at me slowly, searching my face. "You mean that?" I nodded, and something between us shattered. Quietly, like glass under snow. I leaned forward. My hand found hers. Her fingers felt cold. "I don't know what this is," I said honestly. "I don't know if it's love, or guilt, or just unresolved moments from a past we never dared touch. But I can't stop thinking about you, Marianne, and I don't want to pretend anymore." She closed her eyes, and for a moment I thought she might cry. Instead, she kissed me, softly, carefully, like we were both afraid the world might end if we did it wrong. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be, even if it was the most forbidden place I could stand. The next few weeks passed in secret. I made up excuses to travel to Spokane. Jake and I texted occasionally, surface-level check-ins, nothing deep. He had no idea. And with Marianne, everything slowed down. We didn't rush. We didn't play pretend. We just existed in this strange, sacred limbo. We talked about life, about regrets, about what it felt like to be wanted after years of silence. Some nights we fell asleep on the couch. Other nights, I left just after midnight, heart pounding with the weight of what we were doing. I kept thinking we'd reach a line and stop, but there was always another line. One night, after she fell asleep in my arms, I whispered, "I wish we had met at a different time, a different life." She stirred lightly but didn't open her eyes. "So do I," she whispered, But then I wouldn't have been your secret. And there was pain in her voice, because secrets always rot from the inside. Then came Christmas. Jake called, said he'd be in Spokane visiting her and invited me to join. Mom would love to see you, man. It's been too long. I froze. Yeah, maybe, I said, my throat dry. I hadn't seen him since any of this began. How could I sit across the table from him, with his mother's scent still lingering on my skin? But Marian said it would be okay, that she could keep things calm, that we could pretend for just one evening. He doesn't need to know, she said. Not while I'm still here. I nodded, even though every part of me screamed otherwise. The night of Christmas Eve, I drove up again. Jake greeted me with a loud laugh and a hug that made my chest ache. He looked good, healthier than I remembered. Happy. He was dating someone new, said they were planning a vacation to Italy. I envied his freedom, his ignorance. Marian played her part beautifully. Dressed in red, smile warm, eyes calm. We laughed, ate dinner, poured wine. But there were cracks. And Jake was smart. Later that night, he pulled me outside while Marian washed dishes in the kitchen. Hey, he said, suddenly serious. Can I ask you something weird? My heart started pounding. Of course. He stared at the sky for a second. Do you think Mom's okay? I blinked. What do you mean? She seems lighter, but also kind of distant. I don't know. Like there's something she's not saying. I forced a chuckle. Maybe she's just happy you're here. Holidays make people weird. He nodded slowly, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. When I left that night, Marian hugged me a little longer than usual. Her eyes shimmered. Thank you for coming, she whispered. Even if this is the last time. I didn't realize how true those words would be. 3 days later, I got the call. Jake's voice was hollow. She's gone, Ethan. She passed in her sleep last night. Time stopped. The room spun. He asked if I could help with the arrangements, if I could write something for the service. I did, and when I stood in front of her casket and read those words, I didn't mention what we were. I didn't speak of the nights, of the porch, of the kisses, but I looked Jake in the eyes and said, your mother loved deeply, and sometimes quietly. She deserved more than life gave her, but she gave more love than most people ever do. He nodded, eyes wet, and in that moment, I felt like the biggest coward in the world. After the funeral, I went back to Seattle, tried to forget, but the truth doesn't stay buried forever. And 2 months later, Jake showed up at my apartment. In his hands was a letter from her. I opened the door and froze. Jake stood there in the rain. No umbrella, no jacket, just jeans, a gray hoodie, and a folded, cream-colored envelope clenched tightly in his hand. His face was pale but calm. I found this in her desk, he said, holding the letter out. It's addressed to you. I didn't move. He gave a small laugh, dry, tired. Relax, Ethan. I already read it. My throat closed. He pushed past me, stepping into my apartment without waiting for an invitation. Water dripped onto the hardwood floor as he sat down on my couch like he'd done 100 times before. Back when life was simple and honest. Back when I hadn't betrayed him. I closed the door and stood there, unable to speak. He placed the letter on my coffee table. You want to read it? Or should I remind you what it said? I sank into the armchair across from him, hands shaking. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You should have told me. Jake. No, his voice was sharp, but not angry, just broken. She told me everything, Ethan. In the letter, every word. She knew what she was doing. She knew what you were doing. And she forgave you. I stared at the envelope like it might burn me. I didn't mean for it to happen. He looked away, jaw clenched. But it did. I nodded slowly, guilt washing over me in waves. It started before she told me she was sick. That's the part one can't forgive myself for. The feelings were there, buried. And when she said it out loud, I couldn't run. He swallowed. Hard. Did you love her? I hesitated, then said the only truth that mattered. Yes, in a way I never expected. In a way I still can't explain. Jake didn't respond. He just sat there, breathing, Finally, he said, "She wrote that you made her feel alive again, that after Dad died, she felt invisible, like she was just floating through the world. She said, you looked at her like a woman again." Tears welled in my eyes. I looked down, finally reaching for the letter. My name was written in her handwriting, slanted, soft, unmistakably hers. I opened it. "Ethan, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer in this world. But I hope, with all my heart, that I'm still somewhere in your thoughts. I wrote this because I didn't want you to carry the weight of what we shared like a secret sin. What we had wasn't wrong, Ethan. It was just complicated, messy, and beautiful. I never expected love to find me again, especially not in you, especially not like that. But I'm grateful it did. You reminded me that I still had something to give, that even in the quiet corners of life, a fire could still be lit. I know what we did will never make sense to the world, but to me it made sense in the stillness, in the porch lights, in the silence between our words. I'm sorry I asked you to lie, to hide. That wasn't fair to you, or to Jake, but I wasn't strong enough to let go of either of you. Please forgive me, and please forgive yourself. You gave me light when the world was dimming. You gave me warmth when I was cold. And for that, I'll always love you. Tell Jake when you're ready that I'm proud of him, and that he's stronger than he knows. And Ethan, let go of the shame. You were my final joy. Love, Marianne." When I finished reading, my hands were trembling. Jake stood up. "She loved you, man. I didn't want to take anything from you." He shook his head. "You didn't. You gave her something I couldn't. She needed that." We stood in silence. Then he turned toward the door. Before walking out, he looked over his shoulder. "I don't hate you, Ethan, but I need time. A lot of it." I nodded. "I'll wait." He left, and I sat there alone for a long time. The letter in my lap, her voice in my head, my heart shattered, but whole in a way I couldn't explain. It's been 2 years since that night. Jake and I talk now, not like before, but we talk. He invited me to his wedding last spring. I didn't go, but I sent a letter, a real one, in my own handwriting, telling him I was proud, telling him she'd be proud. As for Marianne, I visit her grave every October, not because I owe her, but because I miss her. I sit there and talk about my new projects, about how I still leave her photo in my desk drawer, just beneath my blueprints. And sometimes, when the wind is quiet, I swear I hear her laugh. Some loves aren't meant to be understood. Some choices never feel clean. But what matters is the truth we leave behind. Love doesn't always arrive wrapped in perfection. Sometimes it walks in through the wrong door at the wrong time wearing a familiar face and asks you to feel again. Marianne wasn't my forever, but she was my moment, and some moments you carry for life.